Okay, my friends, Roger once again, Mudfossil University, Mars Moon Space TV from 2017, and this is John Glenn describes the Fireflies in space. Now, here's what's going on. He's shooting up, and he's the first guy going up into orbit. Now watch this. They never explain this and just let it drop. I understand exactly what's going on.
I never saw anything like it. They're around the little... They're coming by the capsule, and they look like little stars, a whole shower of them coming by. They swirl around the capsule and go in front of the window, and they're all brilliantly lighted. They probably average maybe 7 or 8 feet apart, but I can see them all down below me also.
Okay, I can explain this, and nobody ever has been able to, and I can explain it, and it changes everything there is in physics. Okay, my friends, I'm going to go through this kind of quick, and I'm going to tell you what to look for. When this is coming through, there's a particle that John Glenn will say it's like a 1/16 of an inch, and these things are staying 8 feet apart. Now, that ball is in the atmosphere, in our ionosphere, and they're not interacting too much. But when you shoot it out of a laser, that ball comes through like this, and these are pulses. Boom, 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 boom. Now, those pulses, these are the electrons that are free floating in the air, which could collect on you as static. They are there, they're everywhere. Now, we accelerated that light through this venturi, and that's the particle. Again, I have this so many times over and over and over again, so I'm going to cruise through it pretty quick. If you haven't seen it, there's plenty of opportunity to see it. But these are the particles that I'm talking about. Those are electrons. And they glow because this thing is pushing everybody. Now it's accelerated. It's pulling its own particle out of its own wave, which was the concussion wave. Because again, the particle is tiny way back in here. And now all of a sudden it shows up here exploding. Then when they come out the other side, they are like bar magnets. They spin and they create these pulsations due to their polarity. This is literally the photons. As they begin to approach the venturi, well, actually coming the other way, they concuss and they start to shoot out these spikes, and the next thing that happens is these things separate from each other, and you get this. All right, don't forget, I showed you when these things came in, they came in like this, attached. Well, they can't stay together because this is such a confined area, crushing everybody into each other, that they all want to stay way apart. You will hear John Glenn, he says they're 8 feet apart. Then that's the way they want to be. They want to be way apart, and then everything's fine. They are the dark energy and the dark matter. This is going to blow your mind if it's not already blown. You see these little black dots? Those are the bosons. Okay, you see them? Remember, they were attached. They don't explode. These are the weak, I call it the carrier, particle carrier. You know, it's just, this is the white part is what they call a fermion. The black part is what they call a boson. I call it a charged particle carrier because this is the charged particle. This is the carrier of the charged particle. When they concuss, this guy walks away, and they somehow come back in down here. Now, are they always just available, or for some reason, because they're absolutely 100% separated. These are balls here, balls, 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 balls. No balls. So how did they get back together? Are these things just floating freely in here? Are those the dark matter? Because that's what you're talking about, is some non-energetic particle, which that is. It's the smallest particles there are because it was light originally. As now it's even smaller than light. So I can't see you getting too much smaller than that. So this has got to be taken into account. And anyway, now, wait till you hear John Glenn. This will blow your mind. Because the Aether is out there, and he's actually going to be in the middle of it. All right, here's John Glenn going into orbit long ago. And he's the first guy going into orbit around Earth. And he's coming into the particles as they are highlighted behind, well, they're black screened, so that he can see their luminescence, which normally you wouldn't because the sun would be washing them out. Now watch. This is a mind blower, absolute freaking mind blower. And I saw this long ago, and I kept thinking, what is
They lit
that?
up like they're luminescent. I never saw anything like it. They're around the little... They're coming by the capsule, and they look like little stars, a whole shower of them coming by. They swirl around the capsule and go in front of the window, and they're all brilliantly lighted. They probably average maybe 7 or 8 feet apart, but I can see them all down below me also.
You see how specific he was, 7 or 8 feet apart? Later he says they're like a 1/16 of an inch in diameter. And I understand exactly what he's doing here and exactly what he's running into. These are the particles that are our ionosphere. And as he goes through that ionosphere, they won't be able to communicate with him.
Negative. They're very slow. They're not going away from me more than maybe 3 or 4 miles per hour. They're going at the same speed I am, approximately. They're only very slightly under.
Now, before we go any further, you see this down here? You see that white stripe around here? That's the Earth. Oops. That's the Earth. All right? As the Earth scrubs through the particles that are down there, making them glow like that. As I have been saying right along, that creates the heat, and that's what also creates lightning and everything else, scrubbing our surface and our atmosphere against the particles that are out in space. Watch how glowy it is down
away
here.
from me at maybe 3 to 5 miles per hour. Now that I am out in the bright sun, they seem to have disappeared.
Right, they're going to disappear because they're now no longer backlit.
It was just as the sun was coming up. I can still see just a few of them now, even though the sun is up some 20 degrees above the horizon.
All right, the reason he can see them is because they are coming into the shadow of his capsule. He's seeing them right next to his capsule. It becomes evident.
I still have some of these little particles coming around the capsule occasionally here. I can see them against the dark sky even on the day side. Over.
Yeah, see, as long as it's dark behind him, he can see them. They're going to lose contact with him any second now.
Roger, Friendship 7, we'll give blood pressure check. I still have some of these particles that I cannot identify coming around the capsule occasionally, over. Roger, how big are these particles? Very small. I would indicate they're of the order of a 1/16 of an inch or smaller. They drift by the window, and I can see them against the dark sky. Just at sunrise, there were literally thousands of them. It looked like just a myriad of stars, over.
Now, I want to say something. Everybody says, oh, you can't photo these things with a cell phone. Oh, you can't see. Yes, you can. They are enormous when you know what you're doing, and Rod does.
Roger, are they moving by you or floating with you? Some of them float almost with me. Most of them appear to be moving at about 3 to 5 miles an hour away from me. I'm going just a little faster than they are, over. Roger. Only really unusual thing so far beside ASCS trouble were the little particles, luminous particles around the capsule, just thousands of them, right at sunrise over the Pacific, over.
Look at how brilliant it is where we're scrubbing against the atmosphere.
This is Friendship 7. I did not think they were from my control jets, negative, over. Roger, Friendship 7, this is Canton. We have DM solid. Go ahead, over. Roger, this is Friendship 7, and now that sunrise is starting, I have all these little particles coming around the capsule again, just at sunrise.
It's the same thing, over, so I'm not going to bother going any further. I'll try to put a link to it, but it's John Glenn. This was a long time ago, and the funny thing was, I was on Cocoa Beach that day. I watched that thing take off. We used to go to Florida every year. Isn't that amazing? I'll tell you, the things that are coming back just blow my mind. I got other stuff that's coming back to me that is just unbelievable. Absolutely. When you find out the things that I'm about to expose, you will just absolutely floor you. Okay, so obviously this is the ether that is everywhere in space. These are the light particles that are emitted from the sun. And they are attracted to Earth because of the gravitational pull of the magnetic spin of Earth. And they normally collect in the ionosphere. And on very sunny days, they're smashed down into our region, as you saw the Earth scrubbing through it, and there'll be more and more down here, and it'll get hotter and hotter. Anyway, this is the ether that they've always known about. Plato they all talked about it. Every one of them talked about it. Aristotle, the whole 9 yards. Now, that is the ether. That is the soup that surrounds the atomic nucleuses. We are literally just like an atomic nucleus inside of the cloud of electrons. These electrons do all kinds of things down on our planet to make plants grow, to make us have water and everything else. That's what they are. That's all they are. So I imagine that's what's going on down inside of an atom. This is as above, so below. And I'm telling you right now, I have not seen one word that was written in the past that I am discounting anymore. Not a single syllable. You can discount anything you want. But what I discount is what I was fed in school and what we are still being fed as we are consuming the knowledge of these professors and PhDs now. Because they are telling you to consume what they were told to consume, and they had to do it, and they have to continue that consumption in order to continue to be your master, really. Then they literally are your masters now. You're indebted to them in every single way possible. You have to conform to what they tell you or they will fail you. You have to pay them. Then you have to conform to what they say or they will fail you. And then if you go out into the world and you start to raise a fuss like I did, they will put you in a corner. And then and everybody, they'll fire you and everything else. I got a video today. It's talking about, are you losing all your friends? And I said, friends? What are those? Family, everything. When they go against you, they go in mass. I'll put a link to that video. It's very, very enlightening. It was Jordan Maxwell. I think that's what it was. Hold on. All right, I'm just going to go to the last couple of minutes here where he makes the real solid points. Jordan Maxwell, are you losing your friends? The International. Nice guy. I commented. He responded. And listen to this.
Nobody there wants to talk to you because you don't fit anywhere. Nobody's ever seen you. They don't know who you are, and they don't like you, and that's it. So don't talk to them. They don't want to hear you. Well, that's the same thing that you are experiencing today. Once you start to wake up and the Spirit is calling you to wake up and become a different spirit, a different person, and beginning to learn things you never knew before, everybody else in this insane asylum that we live in is not going to like you. You don't look like us. You don't even talk like us. You don't think like us. So therefore, we don't like you. We don't want you around. Don't be surprised if you start waking up, awakening to the spiritual world around you that most people do not even know exists. And if you start waking up to your spiritual life and your spiritual needs and start thinking in terms of other world knowledge and wisdom, you're going to lose a lot of friends, you're going to lose a lot of people, but you will be in that special group who has been called to know these things. So I don't feel I've missed anything. All the friends that have dropped me and left me because of my work, I don't care. I don't need them around me. I'm not about to lower my intellect and my spirituality so that I will have other people like me.
I like this guy. Jordan Maxwell, call me, my friends. Get in contact me somehow. I know precisely this in spades, brother. Okay, my friends, I'm going to show you the soup of space, and this is the atom, and this is the electron flood that covers everything except the atoms in every bit of matter. Okay, my friends, electron flood theory summed up. This is what the nucleus of every atom looks like. The atoms will get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger as they get to be higher and higher up on the periodic chart. Now, this is what the nucleuses will look like There'll be patterns, there'll be extremely exquisite patterns, but the key to take away is that the positive portion, which does not explode, is always in the inside. The negative, which does explode and pushes, is always going to core around that. And then any additional negatives, which are the soup, will be pushed away. They'll be kept away. Now, if it's a helium, which hardly has any real mass to it, it's not going to be able to affect too much around it. So, but it will be in a soup. It will not be like two electrons in an orbit. That is not the way this is working anymore for me. Everything is inside of a soup, and there's a bazillion electrons all over, and this can only affect a certain number of them. You see, like these little wells? I mean, I think this thing is pretty damn accurate, what they're looking at here. These are the wells that the electrons really... Wow. Holy smokes. This is getting better and better. Wait till you see this. First of all, look very carefully. You see these patterns? See those patterns? Wait till you see this. Okay, this is a video Rupert Sheldrake did, and I emailed him about this. He didn't want to get involved, but that's okay. But this shows the patterns which you just saw on that atom. Now, they're going to be all different patterns, but the key is that these regions that you saw, those glowy regions, those are the regions that have, they're pushing something. That's an energetic area, all right? This is what it is. And every one goes up from like hydrogen, helium, lithium, all the way up, and then carbon and oxygen, all the way up the line. And I can see no other possibility here. And that the soup is the soup, which is the ether that surrounds us as well as every atom. And that is the soup. And these are the patterns that we just saw. And this is the soup that surrounds us, and these are also electrons. It's just, and in the ether, these are the same thing. Something you want to understand, though, is that that's not just one little electron area. There's thousands of electrons that make up that little circle, and they push both ways. And then there'll be the positives will always be like into the well, and the surface will always be the negatives. So there'll be wells here, but the surface, you won't be able to penetrate them, negative particles, unless they attach. And then they, and that's what when you do molecular interactions, you force them into these wells and they stick, and then they turn into a different chemistry. It's really not all that hard once you get into electron flood theory. And now, talking about this, I am going to be doing a ton of new research, because now I understand the fluidity of what surrounds the nucleuses. All right, that's the important part, because I could understand resonance frequencies and I understood how they set up stability, but I didn't understand how the cloud of electrons surrounding it worked. But now I think I do. It's just a soup. Okay, my good friends, this absolutely has fried my mind beyond anything I ever thought possible. This is Seeker. This is the world's first MRI of a single atom seen could revolutionize imaging. So this is the atom. That is the nucleus of the atom. This is a cloud of electrons I call the electron flood. Now, this nucleus is... They're going to be all different sizes. Hydrogen, then helium, then lithium, and then all the way up the line, gold and so forth. They get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. That means they get more and more and more interaction with the soup that's around it. And that's all it is now. I was under the impression, as everybody was, protons, neutrons, electrons. No, it's all electrons, 100% electrons. They only have good solid nucleuses at these specific size atoms, which means this size ball gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and it affects more and more and more and more of the soup that it's in. Sometimes it'll be a big ball attached to a little tiny ball. That's okay, because they interact together with their particles, because there's nothing more than a pile of electrons in there too. There's nothing more than electrons. So here's what happens. Anytime you push against any of the electrons are positive and negative. The negative portion explodes when you push on it, just like that. It turns like white. The positive portion just rolls away and stays like a tiny little black ball, exactly like it was when you saw it before it interacts. The white, when it interacts, goes insane. And I show this over and over and over. Now, they are using a new technique to probe these atoms. And here's what it looks like when they do it. All right, here it goes. All right, let's come back here. All right, now, watch what happens. They're going to come down with a magnetic field. So all they're doing is they're taking just almost like a bar magnet, and they're pushing it down here, which is going to force the other electrons to move away. And this is one atom. It's one atom. And these are all the electrons. So they're going to push the electrons around that ball, which is the atom, the core, the nucleus. See it, watch.
The world of microscopy and has potential applications.
Did you see where it went? It went around the ball. You see it? It's wrapping around. It's forcing it to wrap around the ball because of the magnetism.
In all kinds of fields, from quantum.
Now, so we saw that. Now, wait till you see this. This is a killer. And don't forget, here's what it looks like.
Application of a radio frequency
See
and
it?
induced changes in the spin state of the atoms in the material.
The spin state. All they're doing was they just pushed all of those electrons around that atom. That atom has thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of them. It's not just a few protons. They say, oh, there's a couple of protons in there. Well, how did all this happen? They push a bazillion electrons around it because everything's made out of a bazillion electrons. So now, don't forget, that is the cloud that surrounded that nucleus that they were pushing those electrons around. Okay, my friends, it just never gets any better than this. I have been talking about electron flood theory for years. Now I can almost prove it. Now, of course, Mudfossil University, the only university on planet Earth that is factual and correct 100% of the time. Now, this is the world's first MRI of a single atom. Now, that's what they're saying is the nucleus of the atom, and this is the electron flood. Now, I've been saying this for a long time, and now I think I'm fully understanding of the nature of the nucleus. I was still going along with them going to be in certain orbitals. Well, yes and no. If the nucleus is stable, and they are only stable at certain resonance values of certain numbers, so let's say there's a 1,000, it gets stable. So it shakes, 1,000, it locks in stable, that core. 2,000, it locks in stable. It's not really that, but it goes up in huge numbers at a time because the electrons are tiny, tiny, tiny electrons. In a helium, there's 7,350 of them in the core. Now, and it's in a whole flood of electrons around it. And it only has the ability to really interact with some very close ones because, and again, I'm going right away from the orbital theory again now. I'm saying this is flooded exactly like that's flooded. This is the core exactly like that's the core. And instead of just 2 electrons being out there, it's in the soup. This is the same exact identical situation planet Earth is, and our sun. Now the sun is emitting all kinds of stuff out. We are spinning in this ball of particles. These are all electrons. And they're all in our, outside of our, it's in the vacuum of space. Not a vacuum, it's just like this. And as our planet spins inside, it creates friction inside this soup. That's what creates our magnetic field. It actually creates gravity. It creates our weather. It does everything. And out here, way out here, it's thousands of degrees. And on our planet's surface, it's 80 degrees, whatever it is. And the same thing on the sun. Way out here on the sun, on the corona, it's millions of degrees because it's scrubbing through that. And on the surface, it's 6,000 degrees. Totally opposite from what they've been saying. So this is that central core. And instead of 2 electrons being out there now, it's going to be a flood. And that is the flood. I've finally seen it. Now, they are doing experiments by pushing this cloud of electrons. I'm not sure they understand what they're doing, but I think I do. So let's take a look at that.